Welcome back to the Artefactors Union. I am your host and foreman, Douglas Scoundrels. Today we are assembling the Lifted from the Page box with 10 Thunders faction, the Red Library keyword. This box contains 4 models, 1 Paper Tiger, the aforementioned Paper Tiger, and 3 Calligraphers. This being one of them, this gentleman here with the ink and the writing. Our renders on the back, Paper Tiger up there, and the 3 Calligraphers. I think most of the difficulty is going to be in that ink, but we'll see. Let's start with the Paper Tiger. Here he is, with only 5 pieces, so this should be relatively easy. Well, let's hope anyways. Let's go ahead and grab D1 and D3 and combine them together first. Here is D1, and add D3. Now let's go ahead and grab D4, this bit, which is going to be our head. You can see the face of the tiger right here. That's what the head looks like attached. Now let's grab D5. We're just going to go fit right here in the tiger's eye. The eye of the tiger, if you will. And we've got a full tiger face. Now let's add our last bit, D2, which is going to be in this space in the shoulder. Alright. That's the last piece. This one took a little work to get in there, actually. It's just a really tight fit, so a couple ways you can go about to fix it and make sure it goes in as far as possible is you can put some plastic cement inside the hole, then shove the bit in there as far as it'll go reasonably, and then pull it out and see what on the bit is roughed up because it actually, touched the inside of the hole. And then you trim that specifically. Another way to go about it is just to trim around the entirety of the connection point on the bit until it fits in, and then regardless of which one of those you do, you put plastic cement on the bit as opposed to in the hole, and that'll allow the bit to deform just slightly enough that it can squish in there better. But Paper Tiger's all done. Paper Tiger's all done. Hardest part was that the bit on the shoulder, and I explained how to trim that. But pretty easy, 5 bits. Let's move on to the Calligraphers now. Here's our Calligraphers, and they're helpfully labeled A, B, and C. And notice that A doesn't take up a lot of space. It's probably going to be our easiest one. We're going to start with A, and we could grab the body, put on this back of the tabard thing. I think actually a part of the shirt. Anyways, add the head, the arm holding the paintbrush, connect the paintbrush to the arm in front. This ink bit does that, and then I believe this one just connects to the hand out in front. But start with A2 and add A1 on the back there. This is our connection point on A1. You can kind of see the bump there. That doesn't really exist on this side. Cool, very flappy. All right, now let's add our head, which is bit A4. The peg and hold isn't very significant, so he'll wiggle a bunch. You're just looking for this kind of angle on the head. Mine ended up settling in here, so it might be easier than I'm making it sound, but just keep in mind the head's going to be wiggly. Now let's do the left arm. The right arm, my bad. I am terrible at this, apparently. A6. There it is. Don't worry about the angle too much, because we're going to do A3 next, which should solidify how it's supposed to sit, because it's going to connect to the paintbrush and I believe the sleeve of the left hand, but I'll show you how that is. And this part is going to be in front. If you look at the render, he's sort of writing a symbol in the air. Alright, the instructions don't give you a good angle on how this is supposed to go in. However, the render on the back of the box gives you a perfect example of how it's supposed to go in, which makes me extremely happy. It's nice that we have 2 perspectives to look at this model. Hope that happens more often. But anyways, you can see how it's connected to the paintbrush up here, as well as on the cuff of the sleeve, which matches the render. Once you get those 2 points to connect, I would take some tweezers and squeeze the paintbrush with the ink. And that should settle it into the best, most comfortable spot. But you can also probably leave it and it should be okay. They're not the strongest connection points just because it's two relatively small spots, but at least it's in two spots. And the fact that it's pretty close to the body means it's fairly protected and less likely to get ripped off accidentally. So let's do our last bit. I don't believe it is a 5. That's going to go on the hand. Okay, as far as connection points, here's our bit, and quick 360 view of how I'm holding it. Right here you can see a divot, and that's going to connect to the hand. Specifically, there was a bump in the palm of the hand, and that's where it was going to connect to, but this is how it is once it's attached. The thing you're probably going to want to be most aware of is the orientation. So this is obviously a character from some Asian language. I apologize for not knowing that. But since it's a character, it's going to be flat because, you know, they're normally on paper. So you want to make sure it's oriented so it's flat and that our bit we added is not going to be like jutting out one way or the other compared to the longer ink bit, but also it might be useful to show you what it looks like from the back and how it's attached to the hand. Yeah, that should be good. Alright, I think we're done. Calligrapher 1 is done. We're going to call him Mugen because I'm not terribly aware of Asian pop culture, so we're going to go with anime. I apologize. Anyways, hardest part was that pretty much both bits of the ink were difficult in their own way. The first one being just trying to connect it to both points on the hand and paintbrush without knocking anything out of place. And then the second one just for not really having a good point of reference on the orientation or the connection point, but I showed you what those are. Should be fine. Now let's move on to the much more extra calligrapher. Number 2. Alright, I got a calligrapher B and C mixed up. We're just doing B, which is these 2 columns. I'm gonna grab the body, add the leg, as well as the sort of swooshy ink she's standing on. Then an arm, the other arm, and this ink swirl. Excuse me. Throw the head in there at some point and finish up with this ink swirl. So this might change. Not entirely sure yet, but I know we always start with the body, so let's grab B5 and then add B4. Okay, both bits are combined. There's not a lot of wiggle on that, so if you put it in place, you should be good. Here we go. So now we're going to do the ink that is connected to the bottom of her foot. The bit in question is B8, and you can kind of see that there is a tooth on the bottom of her right foot. And if we look at the sprue, specifically B8, you can see there is a connection point for that. Okay, there it is, connected. You can look at the bottom, see that it's flat. A little fiddly for me, but as long as there's something to help support her staying on the base, instead of just being the toes, like old school Malifaux, I'm very happy. So let's give her a left arm, which is going to be bit B6. We've got our arm in. Just check your seam, should be fine. That's the angle we're looking for. Now let's grab the head, B7, and put it on the head hole. Here's the head. She is supposed to be looking down, almost at her knee. So just make sure it's pushed down as far as it can go on the neck, and should be good. Now, actually, I think we're going to have the magical effect attached to her knee go on first, which would be B2? B2. And I'll show you where that attaches. You can see, obviously, the hole in the knee where it attaches to her. Looking at the rough orientation of the ink, and you can see the tooth right there that'll go into the knee, so that's about the angle. And there we go. You could almost glue her hand to the ink. if you are concerned about it getting popped off. Yeah, it's effectively touching it at this point. Okay, so our next step is going to be combining the last two pieces first. Okay, two corrections. One, I did end up gluing it to her hand just because as it tended to see to rotate like that. I should probably let it cure before I doing my clips. Second, she kept falling off this piece, and then I realized I had slightly done the angle wrong. The back of her heel should be basically connected to this big bulgy piece right here. Now let her cure and then move on to our new last two pieces. Alright, this is going to be kind of rough. You have our left arm plus another ink effect, and our connection point for the calligraphy is right there on the elbow. And that will connect to right here on the calligraphy. So let's combine those two and then treat it very delicately. That's a small connection point. And we'll worry about orientation later. Let's just get this on here. There might be something else it can connect to. But you can see the connection point on the shoulder, and that just goes where arms go. Left arm, attach it now. Okay, nope, doesn't connect to anything else. It's going to be floating. It's mildly protected by the ink effects on top and bottom, but just be careful with it. This is roughly the orientation of the calligraphy as well. Just, again, check it with the render, and it should be good. Let's get her on a base. Calligrapher B is done. We're going to call her Foo. This whole model was really pretty delicate and pretty difficult. The bit connecting to the heel needing a really particular way to go in. Otherwise it's going to fall off. The ink that's attached to her knee being easy to knock out of place. I suggest gluing it to the hand. And then the calligraphy just attached to her elbow, floating there, just begging to get knocked off. Again, gorgeous sculpt, but treat it very delicately. Okay, let's move on to our last one, Calligrapher C, or 3, or whatever. Our third and final calligrapher might be the most complicated one, hopefully not, but we'll see. Obviously takes up the most space on the sprue, geez. I'm gonna grab the body and do the 3 pieces of the robe skirt thing. This one goes on the back, this one goes on the front, and I believe this one might go on top of that one, so this will be the last one we do. Then we will do the left arm and the hat, wherever that is. Oh, right here, the hat. Once that's all done, we will figure out where all the ink goes. I'm not going to try and suss that all out right now. So let's start with the body, grab C3, and then add C2 onto the back of it. Okay, so C3, and add C2 to it. I'm going to flip them to the front. C10 is going to be the lower part, going to go here, and then C5 is going to go over the top of it and be the top part here. C10 and C5 all going together pretty easy so far. Now let's do C8, the left arm, and then C9, the hat. The left arm is actually going to be held behind him. It's going to connect on this connection point right here, like so. Now, C9, the hat, is almost completely symmetrical, but you can see the connection point that is just slightly offset, and that the hat tooth is also slightly offset. Look here, the bottom part is just slightly thicker than the top part, so use that to set the hat on correctly, although if you do it the other way, I don't think anyone's going to notice. And the hat. Okay, so for the ink effect, I think we're going to work our way from the bottom up. This first bit is going to connect here on the back of the sleeve, and that is going to be, oh goodness, probably should have looked this up beforehand. C1, yep, C1's going to go back there. Looking at C1, this is the correct orientation, and the connection point is right in there. Yep, you can see the tooth. So glue that to the sleeve. There we go. It took a few tries to get to stick, but once it's dead, it's on there relatively solidly. That's what it looks like from the front. So next is going to be C6? Yes. That is actually going to connect to his neck. Part of it is like a tie or drawstring or whatever. So we'll actually glue up in there as well as right there. But let me show you where that is. Okay, orientation is correct. You're going to glue this point right here up on the neck, and then you can kind of see the tooth that will connect to that hole in the shoulder. It is in place, and as I've mentioned a couple times, tweezers are probably going to be your friend just to orient that correctly. Yeah, that looks good. Now let's add that character on this ink. Okay, I didn't get it quite oriented correctly, but if you squeeze along here so that you're pressing that up into the neck, that'll give you better orientation, and then where I showed you before, press that down as well, just to make sure it's all connected as much as it possibly can be. And the bit we are looking at, our second to last bit, is C7. I'll show you where that goes. Okay, there's actually, I believe, 3 points of contact with that calligraphy letter thing. So I'm going to show you where the most obvious one is and where I think their two are going to go, because there doesn't seem to be as obvious of like a tooth situation. So we're looking at the underside of the bit we just added, and you can see a tooth, oops, right there. And that is going to correspond to, goodness, here's our calligraphy letter, and it's going to connect right there. Oh, there. So this is going to technically be gluing to the underside of that ink effect. And I'm relatively certain that this part is going to kind of hook over the top of it. So it's going to connect there, and then it looks like, and obviously I'll let you know after I attempt it, that you can actually connect this right there to the other ink effect somewhere around here. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it. I think at this point it's going to be easier if you just see what it looks like. All right? Okay, one sec. Yeah, there we go. Okay, you can see it's connected to the underside there, and then it's also connected on the other part of the calligraphy, kind of over the top, and then at the bottom there it is also connected to that other bit of ink, like that. Yeah, that looks good, and that's nice and solid too. So I'm happy, even if it isn't 100% correct, or maybe not the intention, it looks good. So let's add our last bit, the right hand, which is C4. And there we go. I'm not sure what the exact orientation that's supposed to be. Just try to match the render on the back of the box. You can probably not just glue it on the wrist of the sleeve there, but also the ink against the sleeve back here if you so choose. But he's done, thankfully. Let's finish up. Calligrapher number 3 is done. We're going to call him Jen. Yeah, pretty complicated as well. Hardest part is just really dealing with the ink effects and how thin they are and the connection points, how thin those are. But this one gave, I'd say, about as hard as the last one, really. Figuring out how that character connects to the ink blobs, honestly, was a lot of fun. Felt cool to figure that out. And it looks pretty. So, best of luck to you. Let's look at the whole box. The front of the page is done. We have a paper tiger, calligrapher 1, 2, and 3. All 4 models. I think you can tell what the hardest parts were really just dealing with that ink effect. Definitely recommend making sure stuff is cured before you move on, unless I state otherwise. But they're freaking gorgeous, so at least you'll have a good end result. But I believe you can do it. I have been your foreman, Douglas Scoundrels, helping you build a better Malifaux. Oh, bye.